Welcome to the Cbomb. This confidence podcast is for real modern day women who are ready to rid themselves of what's holding them back. My name's Rebecca Sparks. I'm a confidence and life transition coach. I'm the founder of The Daily Guru, and I'm your host for the Cbomb. This podcast tackles all the tricky aspects of lacking self-confidence and is here to help you make some necessary and powerful changes in your life. Each episode, we dive into all the gritty topics which contribute to lacking self-confidence. So if you're wanting to radically improve your self-esteem and overall life experience, then you are in the right place. So let's get started. Hello. I am so happy to have you here and to have you join me for episode 2 of the Cbomb. I have just loved receiving all of your feedback and questions about how to apply the work that I shared in episode 1 and how you implement this into your life. It's been so amazing. This is exactly why I wanted to launch the Cbomb in the first place, to help people take a deeper dive into these really important topics around self-confidence. Often when we hear about some of these topics, so often we hear about them so regularly that we start thinking implementing them into our life should just be quick and easy and it should just happen. And this is often a really big misconception. Now, I'm not saying if it's not going to be quick and easy, it should be difficult and a long process. What I'm saying is we need to decide that it's going to be a priority and that we're going to be intentional with it. So we need to decide that this is a priority in our life and that we're going to create space for it so that on a daily basis, we are being intentional with these changes, which is why I loved receiving all these questions about how you can break this down and turn it into true actions in your day-to-day. So I really love that process. Please keep your questions coming. So the Cbomb is here to help you break down these different learnings and habits into something that's much more digestible for you, to allow you to begin to implement these changes in your own life. So often when I meet a new client, they share what they've done up until signing up with me as a coach. And often what they share with me is what I now call a spray and pray strategy. So they have had a few key areas of their life that they are unhappy with or are struggling with. So perhaps that's feeling unhappy in their job and not feeling very confident enough to make the change that they want to make. Or perhaps they're feeling challenged in their personal life, and this is giving them some social anxiety and a fear around this particular area. So they've recognized the problem and they've decided to address the problem and they've gone full steam. So what they've done is they've done what most people do, and they hit up the internet for some advice. And they've found countless of amazing articles and blogs and interviews from professionals that are giving really fantastic advice and suggestions of what they need to do to create change in their life. But now what they're doing is they're heading off in 10 different directions, trying to change 12 different things all at once. From meditating to future self-journaling, to reading about essentialism, to cleaning up their diet, deciding to do 10,000 steps a day, starting networking because apparently our network is our net worth, to deciding to declutter the entire house, to reading up about conscious parenting, to exploring more about toxins in the home, and so on. It's absolutely exhausting. They arrive with me just feeling so depleted because they are trying to do too many things at once. None of them are feeling great. None of them are they able to be consistent with because they're just doing so many things at once. And as a result, they aren't getting the results that they wanted. They aren't creating the change. And so they're feeling quite fatigued and disappointed. And they're asking me, why isn't this working? I am putting so much effort into this and it just feels like nothing is changing. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, I want you to know this is extremely common. The challenge with what's occurring here is that we're shooting off in too many different directions at once versus narrowing down where the true challenges are and pain points and where we're going to get the best results first and creating that development plan. So that is the purpose of the Cbomb for all of you, to listen to these different topics and for you to assess whether they resonate, for you to assess whether this is something that is going on in your life. And if it is, for you to extract all the different coaching activities and insights and lessons that I'm sharing and start implementing them in your life. So it's not to do all of it, it's for you to assess which ones really are relevant and to start doing that. And so today we are starting with the topic of people pleasing for episode 2. Now, this is a subject that I have always been extremely fascinated with, about how we are so interested in what other people think. And for full disclosure here, I want you to know that I've spent the majority of my life as a people pleaser. I'm proud to say I'm now a recovering people pleaser, and that everything that I'm about to share with you is because I have taken my own medicine. I have gone on this journey myself. I recognized that it was something that was really holding me back from living the life that I wanted, from having the relationships that I wanted, from having the career that I wanted. And so I had to get really honest with myself about why this was happening. And people pleasing was one of those reasons. So everything that I share, I've taken the medicine, I've gone through the process, and I've had the difficult conversations with myself. So, people pleasing. We spend so much of our life trying to manage and control and influence what other people think of us. If you really take the time to really think about how much time is spent doing this in your own life, think about all the questions that come up on an hourly, daily basis. What will they think of me? Will they like my outfit? Will people admire me or think badly of me for making this career change? What will my husband think? What will my parents think? What will my children think? What will my friends think? What will my boss think? Even what will strangers think of me? I've seen people twist themselves into a life that they don't even like or enjoy just to try and meet the perceived expectations from loved ones. The people that they have decided their opinions matter more than their own about their own life. And I say perceived because that's exactly what it is. It's their perception that these people's opinions matter more. So much of what we do is trying to control other people's opinions about us. And now there are 3 key components that I want to talk you through about this. First of all, we cannot control someone else's opinion of us. They are the only ones in control of their mind. And if you listened to episode 1, you would also understand that even us ourselves aren't in control all the time of what thoughts are coming up unless we consciously do that. So not only are you not in control of their thoughts, sometimes they aren't even in control of what is influencing their opinion and decisions. So how on earth could you be in control of that if they aren't even themselves? And yet so many of us spend so much time pretending and lying to others to try and influence and control what they think about us. But in actual fact, it's impossible. You can be the kindest, sweetest, warmest, loveliest, most charismatic person, and someone may still not like you. And they may disagree with your opinions. And they may just be obnoxious to you. And that is their prerogative. Wayne Dyer used to share that he expected at least 30% of people to not be in agreement with his message that he shared. Now, he didn't say this because he doubted his work, but because he knew that we all come with our own experiences, our own beliefs and our own values, which help us make our decisions. And for some, what he had to say would rub up against their beliefs, meaning they would find fault and disagreement with his message. He also said his acceptance of this fact was also what set him free from concerning himself with other people's opinions, which I just absolutely loved when I heard that. So now I want this podcast to help you start exploring setting yourself free from being attached to other people's opinions as your measure of worth. So what other people think of you is firstly not in your control, and secondly, it's actually none of our opinion. So there's this really interesting concept, and it's shared by a wonderful woman called Brooke Castillo. And this concept highlights, it's called the constant concept, and it highlights that you are the constant in your own life. And so the example she shares with this to help explain it a little better is you walk into a party and you meet 10 people there. And during your time at the party, you share your story about your life with these 10 people, these 10 strangers. Now, you are the constant here. You are sharing the same message with the same people at the same time, which means that they are all experiencing the exact same message from the exact same person in the exact same environment, which means they all form the exact same opinion about you. There is no difference between everyone's version of events because you are the constant and they have all experienced you at the exact same time. Now, as you know, all 10 people in true life are likely to have all had a different version of events and experience and thoughts about you from that experience. Why? Because people base their opinions and interpretations based on a variety of different beliefs, values, and stories that are occurring in their own head. which you are not in control of. So you may remind someone of an annoying auntie they think is really talkative. So the moment you start talking, they're irritated by you. Someone else in the group, you may remind them of someone that they admire because you're really trendy and fashionable and they think your clothing sense is awesome. And so they're completely drawn in and loving everything that you have to say. Someone else in the group might think that you come across a bit obnoxious the way that you're talking. Someone else in the group might be nodding their head the entire time that you're talking, which you take as a very positive indication of them enjoying what you have to say. But in actual fact, they aren't listening to a word that you are saying because they're completely in their head, trying to figure out, did they turn the curling iron off tonight before they left home? All of which you have no control over. It is impossible for you to know what people are thinking or influence all these different layers of preferences, beliefs, biases, and stories that we all come riddled with. It's literally impossible. Therefore, controlling what other people think about you is just as achievable as licking your own elbow. So now that all of you are probably trying to do that, you will now know that that's completely unachievable and therefore understand that also it's completely unachievable to control someone else's thinking. The second thing I want to talk to you about right now is about the fact that people pleasing is the fact that when our efforts are focused on people pleasing, we are actually lying to people about who we are. We are presenting a version of ourselves to people which we think they are going to like, and therefore it's like a watered down version of who we are. It's inauthentic. It's like something we've created based on our perception of what they're going to like. So an example I often share with clients about this is, let's pretend you are a beautiful, juicy pineapple. You're an intelligent, interesting, gorgeous pineapple. But when you're out and around other people, socializing or at work, you notice that cherries seem to get a lot of attention and recognition. And you want this type of attention and recognition. So you decide, well, I can be a cherry, and if that's what it takes to get this type of recognition from people. So you begin to act and behave and present yourself just like a cherry. Now, for a period of time, this feels great because now you're starting to get recognition from the people that you've been chasing their approval for a period of time. But that comes at a cost because this is an extremely tiring process because it doesn't come naturally to you because you aren't naturally a cherry and it's not who you really are. But you want these relationships so it persists and slowly it starts becoming a habit. Now, the issue with this is the moment someone gets close to you, either A, you put a wall up because you know you have been inauthentic with them and therefore you cannot let them get close because you're too scared that you'll be rejected when they figure it out. Or B, you do start showing it either intentionally or accidentally and they start realizing that you aren't in fact a cherry and you're a pineapple. Now, there is nothing wrong with being a pineapple. In fact, pineapples are incredible people, great qualities, wonderful values, but your entire relationship was built on a facade of you pretending to be a cherry. So not only have you hidden your most amazing qualities in this process, you have also been so focused on people pleasing, your entire relationship has been really draining and untrue. And now here's the really crazy part, and it's something that people pleasers, it's very confronting to acknowledge this, but it's the truth. When these awkward occurrences arise and we get rejected or not accepted or we don't receive the connection that we've been craving and hoping for, we're then highly offended by this and act as if the other person is being mean by withdrawing or not offering a true connection. But in actual fact, it is us that has been the unintentional liar. The people pleaser is the person who entered this relationship by being untrue about who they really were. Now, the third thing I want to share with you here is that if you show up as a version of yourself that you think people will really like, and they do really like that, so you start getting all this praise and acceptance, you're still going to feel unhappy and dissatisfied as they still don't know you and they still don't appreciate who you really are. Which means not only is this relationship built on a lie about who you are, it means you can never get your own needs met in this relationship, your true needs, because how would they ever know them when you're presenting yourself as something different than what you really are? One of the biggest reasons we create these facades and people-pleasing habits is to avoid rejection. And here's the thing that I have to share with my clients all the time is rejection is sadly just a part of life. Like, we can't stop that from happening. It's something we all experience at different times in our life. It's a primal fear we all have about being rejected from our loved ones, from social groups, from our community. This can rock us to our core, these moments in our life, but they're going to happen. But the only thing worse than being rejected is being rejected as the fake and inauthentic version of ourselves. Because then you realize you too aren't even that invested in the opinion you shared or the person you are presenting as yourself. And now you are being rejected by these people and you weren't even being the real you. You're being rejected as a facade. So if this is something that's resonating with you, I'm sure a big question running through your mind right now is, what's the alternative? You know, we've found ourselves in this position. We've bound ourselves up in knots completely unintentionally, bizarrely with some kind of good intention about it, about being kind, being a nice person. And it's wrapped us up in a bundle that has become unhealthy, and it's stopping us from having the relationships that we want. It's stopping us from having the career that we want and stopping us from having the life that we want. So what's the alternative? And the answer to this, it sounds so simple, but it's the truth. And that is to decide to start showing up as ourselves. So having the awareness of where we're presenting an inauthentic version of ourselves to please others is the first step. And secondly, deciding that we're going to do something different. Because as I've mentioned throughout this podcast, there are going to be many relationships and occasions in your life where you're just on default mode now. If you've been people pleasing for as long as I was, there were areas of my life I didn't even realize I was doing it. And all at different grades and variances. Sometimes it would show up in a small way, sometimes it would show up in a big way. So recognizing where it's showing up in your life is the first step that I recommend. Take some time, journal it down, go through your different relationships, go through the different situations in your life where you feel these feelings coming up of uncomfortableness, where you recognize you're putting on a facade and you're focused so much on other people's needs and pleasing them that you're not being your true self. And then secondly, you need to decide that you want that to change, because that decision and mentally logging that in your brain is going to start changing your habits and your patterns and your behaviors and how you show up for yourself. Now, what I want you to know here is that you can be the juiciest pineapple in the entire world, and yet someone may still not like pineapples. And you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared that you aren't going to be everyone's cup of tea when you show up as your true self. The same way that you wouldn't have been everyone's cup of tea when you were showing up as your inauthentic, people-pleasing self. And that's okay for you, the true you, not to be everyone's cup of tea. In fact, it's more than okay. It's to be expected. The ones who decide that they don't like you when you show up as your true self and you give them time to really get to know your true self, because we do need to create space for that transition. If you have been presenting a version of yourself that isn't wholly true for a while, you need to give that relationship a bit of time to adjust. But if once you have adjusted, if those people decide they don't like you, they're not your people. And if you find yourself thinking, what if I want them to be my people? I would ask yourself, what is it exactly about those people that you admire and value so greatly? Because if they aren't going to value who you really are, you will never get joy, connection, and growth from that type of relationship. By choosing to chase what isn't serving you, you commit yourself to an ongoing facade, exhaustion, and a lack of appreciation for who you really are and all your amazing pineapple qualities. Showing up and being who you really are, being seen by others in your true light and being loved for all those qualities, honestly, leaves all those other relationships that you have chased for so long in the dust, because you are now surrounded by people who really dig you. They completely adore you for you. No facades needed. And your connection is so much stronger because you too connect with them and can appreciate them so much more for all of their amazing qualities, because you aren't so consumed with how do I please them? How do I make the right decision right now? I also want to say, if you are going to go through this transition and there's some key relationships in your life that you recognize, I haven't been being my honest self. I have been people pleasing. I've been putting their opinion above my own, all of those different things we've been discussing today. Don't assume that many of those watered down relationships will disappear as a result of you finally showing up as the real you. Many of them will no doubt welcome the opportunity to finally get the elephant out of the room and for you to just relax and be the real you. Now, this, as I said earlier, may take a bit of time, so allow space for that. Try and hold back judgment and allow space for transition, and know that the right people will stick around. The right people for you, your people. And the ones who don't, they're not your people. Now, the final thing I want to talk to you about today about people pleasing is I want to talk to you about how we chase approval and why this is so powerful for us and why we do it. People pleasers, we become approval addicts. And this has all begun, it all begins for most of us in childhood, habits that we pick up in our childhood. And it goes from being the good child. So, you tidy your room, we get approval. You let your friend come over and choose a movie, you get the approval. You get good grades, we get the approval. We clean our room, we get the approval. And then this just carries on. And for some, that approval of being good and pleasing others becomes anchored in our behavior and how we think we're supposed to behave. And so as we click over into adulthood, this can continue on for us, even though that's not going to serve us as a functioning adult. So it's a habit, but this behavior is now keeping you hidden from the life that you want. So what I mean by that is you don't want to show up unless you know you're going to get the praise and approval. So you don't want to put yourself out there unless you can guarantee you'll get that. And if you are concerned that you won't, not getting approval and praise feels exactly like rejection when there's nothing there. And so you stay small and stay hidden unless you can guarantee that. So maturing is growing out of this need, building our own internal compass to allow us to know when we have done a great job and when we deserve praise, and we can give that to ourselves. Now, I want to be clear that I said this in my last podcast. As human beings, we all enjoy external feedback, and that's not going away. But when we go 100% external versus having an internal compass ourselves, that's where it becomes unhealthy. So if you have really worked hard on a project, or you have spent time with your child to help them with their reading projects, or you have been really committed to a fitness goal and you've just smashed it, you being able to look at yourself in the mirror and acknowledge what you have achieved and really feel that for yourself before needing to go external, that's what progress looks like. That's the direction we want to go in when we're trying to break the habit of people pleasing. And that's how we create change. We shift the focus to ourself. We start building our own internal self-approval practice, and we begin accessing this on a regular basis. So celebrating the small wins, and these can be small incremental steps, but when they're made over a period of time, they slowly become your new norm. And that's really exciting when that happens. So take a step back and think about the areas in your life where you have been going completely external for other people's approval, and ask yourself, how could you make yourself feel better and praise yourself for that achievement before going external? How could you celebrate that win? And then ask yourself how you implement that into your habits. So your daily, weekly, monthly habits, so that you're getting into the practice of this being your new behavior. So I hope this has helped you explore how people pleasing may be affecting your self-confidence. As always, I recommend you take a few minutes to decide what changes you're going to make in your life as a result of listening to this podcast, because turning this into action is where the true change will really begin. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.